G'day all, this is the Flameclaw, and this video is a response to a video Clement posted a little while ago called Mega Man and Gamer Entitlement, in which he discussed the way that Mega Man fans have been reacting to Capcom's treatment of the series over the last few years. Now, I am a Mega Man fan. I've only been a fan for a couple of years because I actually got into the series when I was watching both Clement's playthroughs of Mega Man as well as the Brain Scratch comms runs, and that was like a platformer that sparked my interest because I never had an NES growing up, so I had never played those games before, so I thought I'd give them a try and whatnot. But my history with Mega Man isn't really what's important right now. What I want to discuss is my perspective of the whole Capcom hates Mega Man, Capcom just doing nothing with it, all that sort of negativity, as Clement put in his video, about Mega Man as a franchise and the way that Capcom are handling it. Now, I think the kind of main grip of what Clement's getting at in his video, as he says in his video description and covers several times in the video itself, is that Mega Man has had it pretty good. And that's something that I'm really not too sure I agree with. I can see where he's coming from in the past, because way back, like before the last few years, Mega Man did have a very consistent release schedule. There'd be main series games every year, and even during the kind of quiet period for classic Mega Man, there were the Zero series and ZX games and that sort of thing, just to tide people over. But that's not so much the case today, because Mega Man hasn't had a proper main series release since Mega Man 10 now. And what Capcom have offered in this time between then, a couple of game cancellations, which is the Rockman universe, as well as the Mega Man Legends 3 drama, which I'll get into later, and the Street Fighter Cross Mega Man fan game, which they basically just took the guy's fan game, officially endorsed it, and released it on his behalf. So when people say that Mega Man's been neglected over the last few years, I can definitely see where they're coming from with that. In his video, Clement brought up the huge number of games from the Mega Man library, like the classic series games, the X series, the Zero series, the ZX series, Legend series, and etc. But that in itself is actually making more of a problem for people feeling betrayed, because what Capcom have done, and it's a similar thing to what Sega have done with Sonic fans, albeit not quite as poorly managed as the Sonic fans problem, but they've divided their fan base up. So now, instead of having just this one group of people who want a new classic Mega Man game or whatever, they've now got people who want a new classic game, they've got people who want a new X game, they've got people who want a new Legends game or whatever. So all they've done is now they've made more hungry mouths to feed, essentially, which is what brings me on to the Legends 3 being cancelled problem, which Clement made a point of saying that in the grand scheme of things that it's not that big of a hit to the Mega Man series overall. And if you're talking purely the series overall, you're right, it is just one game out of about 50 odd. But as I just said, the fan base are now divided. They all have their own favourite games. So while things like Street Fighter Cross Mega Man or whatever are giving content to the series as a whole, and they're probably gonna please some classic fans, they're not gonna make up for the fact that the people who wanted Legends 3 aren't getting Legends 3, because actually they were promised that game, they're not getting it, and so it doesn't matter the fact that Mega Man as a whole hasn't been abandoned, it's the thing they wanted that's been abandoned, so that's why they're upset. But even if we're talking the classic series stuff that we've got, the last classic release, if you count it, and Clement says he does, personally I'm on the fence about whether it even counts as a game, is the Street Fighter Cross Mega Man fan game, basically. To me, that seems like a very slapdash way of throwing out an anniversary title. It's like they only really thought they should do something at the last minute, and instead of actually investing proper time into the game, they just released it what seems like basically as is. It was only ever released on Windows, and the only way you can play it on something else is to get a kind of hack job emulation deal that someone else has put together. And there's no console release either, so if you haven't got a computer that runs something that can run the game, then you're basically screwed in that regard. So I don't think it's the kind of fan service thing that you would expect from an anniversary title. If you think like Sonic Generations, it's a full retail release that Sega put out, whereas Capcom with towards Mega Man, they've literally just, some guys made a fan game and they've went, yeah, this'll do. And that's why I don't really see it as satisfying in that regard. But after the games, the other thing that Clement mentioned about the Mega Man series being ongoing still, the other media related to it, and he mentioned like the old TV series, and in particular put emphasis on the Archie comic series, which again you've got a divided fan base. So what you're releasing there, like a comic book, most people who've got into Mega Man care more for the gameplay. So the comic book's cool for people who like the comic book, and I quite enjoyed the Worlds Collide arc, for example. But again, you're still not satisfying people who you've given expectations to. And on to the next point Clement brought up about why people seem to care more about Mega Man being like sort of left on the side compared to say Beautiful Joe or Final Fight or Onimusha or whatnot, is that for things like Beautiful Joe or whatever, people weren't given the same expectation. There wasn't a phase where Beautiful Joe had a new game every year, and so people didn't kind of see it as a series, so to speak, but more these few games that we enjoy. Whereas Mega Man, there's kind of always been a promise of more Mega Man. Like when you get to a long running series like Mega Man, where you got like 10 games in your main series and you got loads of spin-offs and even generational sequels, you kind of get more deeply involved in it, so you kind of got more of a thirst for more. And in terms of this whole Capcom hates Mega Man sort of logic, I think there is kind of a bit of miscommunication here, or misunderstandings more specifically, because like when we say Capcom hates Mega Man, that is more like a joke exaggerating observations and whatnot. Like I have said in some of my playthroughs and commentaries on here that Capcom hates Mega Man, kind of half jokingly, but poking fun lightly at the way there hasn't been more Mega Man content lately. And no, I don't honestly think that Capcom sit in their office throwing darts at a Mega Man dartboard or heating their office with like burning Mega Man action figures or anything. No, that's not the way people are intending this thing. It's just kind of poking fun to it a bit. And regarding the whole hatred of Capcom in general, like it's not exclusively from the way Mega Man's being treated. Like I think that's kind of a bit of a straw man that you pull in there, purely because it's just another one of Capcom's offences. They've already pulled crap like the charging money for on-disc DLC, and they've already like upset a load of Devil May Cry fans, because as much as I personally like DMC, I can fully appreciate why people don't like that drastic change to something that they really enjoy. And then on top of that, you've got like Street Fighter fans who would probably quite like a new game at this point, but instead they just get another re-release of Street Fighter 4 with some slight tweak or something. And it's just these little things pile up, and that's why there's this bitterness towards Capcom now. So people aren't picking on them, so to speak, exclusively for not releasing a Mega Man game in a while. It's just that's something that people aren't too hopeful of it because they've seen all these other franchises get screwed over. And that's why there's this sort of distaste towards Capcom in general lately. But to move on to what's one of the biggest parts of Clement's video for me is the whole aura of negativity that he brings up, like about how fans are entitled to games. And personally, I think that entitled is being used the wrong way here. And my reasoning for that is that I don't think it's wrong for people to feel entitled to games from a game company. I think that people have every right to have expectations of what they want companies to release, and if they're dissatisfied with it, they kind of have every right to voice that opinion. And yes, sometimes things will be overly negative. I know that myself. I tend to have some unpopular opinions within the gaming community. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I've really enjoyed DMC Devil May Cry. But I know that whenever I go online and people are talking about DMC, it's mostly, I hate that. And that's alright. Like, it doesn't hurt me personally that someone's disagreeing with me. In the same way that why won't Capcom release a new Mega Man? Do they hate Mega Man? That doesn't reduce the enjoyment of existing Mega Man or anything like that. It's just people are dissatisfied with Capcom's handling of certain things. And like, even if you don't think that Capcom are handling it wrong, you can at least sit back and enjoy what you've got without being upset by what other people think of it. And yes, that does sometimes mean being really loud about it. Like, the way Clement's posted screenshots of various people going on about how Capcom hate Mega Man and all that sort of malarkey on YouTube comments and whatnot. Like, if you want something to change, or if you're unsatisfied about something, you do have to make a noise about it. If you think like the Operation Rainfall thing, I doubt that any of those games would have been localised if it was just some guy quietly posting on his Twitter or something. I think it'd be cool if Xenoblade got translated or something like that. No, they have to make noise for the company to see it, because otherwise it just ain't gonna happen. And I absolutely have to call out bullshit on the "if you're nice to Capcom, they'll make games for you" comment, because that just ain't how they're gonna work. It's like, I just said, like, you have to make noise about it. If we're just kind of passively accepting what Capcom are doing, they're not gonna change anything. They're just gonna keep on slowly doing nothing while occasionally giving us the odd figurine or something to keep us satisfied. That you can't just sit back and be nice with things like that. You have to actively criticise. In this same section, Clement's brought up the idea of what's so hard about going back and just playing the legacy games we've got. And I can fully appreciate wanting to go back and replay games you've played already. Like, I've beat Mega Man 2 and Mega Man X God knows how many times now. But at the same time, you can still do things with this series. It's not like it's a concept that's overstayed its welcome, like you could say things like Rock Band or Guitar Hero did. But no, this is a series that there's still more you can do with. You can make new bosses, you can make new games with this. So why aren't they doing anything more with it? That's why people want more Mega Man still. It's not just a case of we suddenly can't play our old games anymore for whatever reason. And on that note, with what Capcom have been doing this month, they've referred to it as Mega May, where they're just releasing the classic Mega Man games on the Virtual Console along with the Game Boy games. Like, it's good that they're doing that, but really that doesn't count as a new game, because that's a game that's been out already and they're finally just making these games accessible to people. And I don't count that as a release. I actually expect publishers to publish all their old games on the Virtual Console at this point, purely because that's mainly the only way that a lot of people can play it without either pirating the game or like having to pay some idiot on eBay like 60 odd quid just for this one game. But to go to what Clement said about replaying Mega Man 9 and how that felt like it could have been a cap off to the Mega Man series, the thing with that is that they didn't cap off the series. They brought out 10 and left that open-ended. So now, again, people are expecting a new game, because this isn't like the Zero series. Like, people aren't expecting a new Zero game because that game ended. Like, there was a resolution to the Zero series, whereas with classic series, there's never been like that. They've left it open. They could easily just whack another sequel out. And the same with the X series. Like, after the whole X6 shenanigans of, like, digging up a plot that was supposed to be ended and whatnot, now they could easily put out a 16-bit X9 or even just like a new X9. Again, with the Legends stuff, there was going to be a new game, so that's clearly not concluded, but now people are just saying, why can't we have this new game? It's easily done. Like, you could easily just add this on without screwing anything up. So now, why can't we just play a new game? We're expecting a new game. And that's fair enough in my eyes. In terms of how Clement mentioned that he doesn't want Mega Man to be kind of overkilled, I don't think that would happen with Mega Man the same way it does like with Mario or whatever. Because Mega Man as a concept, particularly classic and X series, they've always been a formula but it's the new bosses and the new level designs and that make them feel fresh. It's not like with Mario where you get a very similar game the next year. If you released a new Mega Man game with new bosses and whatnot every year, it would still feel like a new game and we'd have a constant supply of new games to play. And that's basically what people want. Whereas, like you mentioned with Sonic, if Sonic took 3 years off, would people care? I think people would care, because actually they've been given this expectation of a new game every year, and if you suddenly take that away from them, that's going to piss them off. That's going to annoy them. And in terms of the argument about how if you treated other publishers the way you treat Capcom for Mega Man, how would that sound like with delayed games and whatnot? Like, the first one you mentioned was with Pikmin. Like, Pikmin, there was only 2 games before the massive delay, so people weren't given the same expectation with Pikmin as they are with Mega Man, because they didn't have that phase of a consistent launch schedule before, boom, nothing, gone, there's no more. So that's just, there's different expectations for that series compared to Mega Man. And in terms with the other one you mentioned, Half-Life, like, how many years have people been waiting for Half-Life 3 now? Yeah, people are kind of annoyed about that. They wanted that game, and it's taken forever for them to even hear anything about it. So yeah, it's not Mega Man fans in particular being unreasonable or anything. It's just that people, when they want something, they want to make themselves heard that they want something. It's not really like a bitter hatred towards the person who made something they want or whatever. On the next point, when people complain about this, they're not taking it as a personal insult. They're just annoyed that they're kind of being neglected to put to the side or whatever, because the cancellations themselves, if it was one game that was cancelled, people might be more understanding, but it's been like a series of Mega Man games. We've got both the Rockman Universe game and Legends 3, and we're now finding out more about other Capcom projects that have been let go. And so it's not a knee-jerk reaction, it's just, oh, here we go again. That's why there's this sort of betrayal sense. While the likes of Mighty Number 9 and Azure Striker Gunvolt and that, they're catering to the same audience, or at least a similar audience to what Mega Man did, but that's not really a justification for Capcom just not getting to a new Mega Man already. I think it's actually kind of a sad sign that people are having to kind of go to other publishers for something that they've wanted from Capcom for years. I think that's kind of sad, really. Yes, some game series do have it worse than Mega Man. I'm not going to deny that Star Fox fans and F-Zero fans, they're going to be pissed off. Even though the expectation wasn't promised to them, they're going to be upset, and that is worse because they don't have as much of a legacy to play through. But still, just because something is relatively worse doesn't stop it from being a bad situation in the first place. So yeah, to conclude, I'm just going to say, I really hope Capcom get to making more Mega Man sometime soon. Naturally, from the treatment over the past couple of years, I'm not too optimistic that'll happen, but I'm going to hope it does. Just because especially with Mega Man being in Smash 4 now, they're going to reach a whole new audience through Smash, so they're probably going to do pretty well if they bring out more Mega Man now, and that will be a great thing, because hopefully they can re-kickstart this Mega Man series. It will just be a huge shame if they were to throw away this opportunity to revitalise the series, because actually there's demand, and ignoring demand, especially when it's expectation demand, that's a wasted opportunity, and that's the sort of thing that doesn't look good on Capcom. It's not about the fans having unrealistic expectations, it's Capcom aren't providing reasonable expectations. As a final wrap up, I want to thank Clement for bringing this up as a discussion point once again. Although I obviously hugely disagree with him from what you've spent the last 18-19 minutes listening to, I appreciate that it's being discussed again, because the whole Mega Man, should there be more games thing, after so long now of being put to the side, the discussion has also been put to the side, and I think whatever happens now, we needed to bring it up, we need to kind of keep it going, so to speak, and hopefully we'll get more Mega Man out of it. hopefully, like, things will tidy up somehow. I'm not sure how. I'd like to point out that no, I'm not at all mad at Clement for having this sort of view. I know a lot of people tend to write stuff off like this as hater videos or whatever. That's not the case. I do really appreciate Clement's Mega Man LPs, and that no problem there whatsoever. So to all who've listened, thank you. I'll have some more videos for you later on. See ya.